voice acting, the only really difference is you don't have to memorize the script, but you have to be familiar with it. And it helps, because then you don't have to, it's easier to, you know, interject another line if you mess up or whatever. You know, you got separate feeds as far as the way the studio is set up. You don't have to worry about spotting or lighting or anything like that. The only thing you have to worry about is making your voice come across as believable as possible.
The difference between, say, like audiobooks and regular audio plays is that audiobooks is usually one author and they're the narrator and they play all of the characters. But with an audio play, everyone is cast and they're all completely different people, and it's a real story where there are different people playing different parts.
Voice acting to me that's one thing I love about this project. I'm so glad that I found Dexter and what he was doing here, because you know, that's an art in itself. That, you know, you think about generations now, you go back 3-4 generations, that's all you had was radio, that and storytelling. You know, so the better storyteller you were and the better you conveyed a story through voice, you know, that's how you set the imagery up and how you pictured, you know, the story in your mind. And there's a lot of times where, like reading the book, you know, you read a book and you get your own imagery of how a story lays out and how characters even appear. And it's the same way with radio, or when you're listening to a story, you know, you're creating that imagery, to where when you go see a movie, you're sort of, you know, you're sort of missing that element. You know, you're getting someone else's interpretation of that story. And that can be great, but you know, when you're listening to a story such as the ones that are here, you know, when I read them at first and then you hear them, you know, you've got that imagery, and that's where you have good writing. If it's a well-written story, then it's going to come through in the portrayal of the characters. And that's one thing I've really liked about it, the few projects I've done so far here, is they've been so well written, you know, that they're good stories, so it's easy to get involved with them.
The first thing is, honestly the best thing, is when you're doing voice acting is you don't have to spend 3 hours in a makeup chair and you can come in your pajamas. But with voice acting, it's definitely, I feel like you look over the script like 20 times more in my case, because it's all about how you sound. And it's, for an actor, it's half of the things that you can use when you're acting are now cut out. You don't have that. You don't have the way that you look, you don't have your reactions to people's things, and acting is reacting, and you can't show that with your voice work. So I find it more challenging, but I really, really enjoy it, because it lets you use your voice in ways that you normally wouldn't in film, because when you're on film, your voice is definitely there, and then obviously you dub over a lot of stuff that you're doing, so you do go into the studio for film work still, but at the same time, it's not what the audience is focusing on. They're not going to sit there when you're watching your film and close their eyes and just listen to you talk. More cases than not, they'll be watching the way that you answer the other person and your reactions to them. And so with voice work, it's really, you got to pour as much as you can into the words that you have, because that's all you got.
Don't me. I'm over it.
Sure.
I'm over it.
I get it. Your move.
Look, the only thing that ticked me off is Dana was my friend for years before I even met Neil. Then Neil and I dated for 2 years, 3 months, and 5 days, and then we broke up.
An audio play, pretty much theater for the ears, I guess. You know, there again, you know, you're having someone reach down and actually use an imagination. And if anything, this generation is missing out on, and to me, it's one of the saddest things, is they're losing their ability to imagine. There's no mystery anymore. You know, back when I was a kid, you know, if you had a television, you were pretty well off if it was color TV. But even then, you know, you still had radio, and you still had the spoken word, and that's how you told stories. And those are the things I remember most from my childhood, was, you know, family members telling me these great stories. Some of them grandiose, and pardon my language, some of them pure bullshit. But those are the things that stuck in my mind, and I think, you know, sort of formed me and the person I am today.
Listen, I told you all the answers were on YouTube. You should have looked it up. Don't expect me to drop math for basketball. Fucking A, I did that backwards, didn't I?
I hope you would drop math for basketball.
I told you all the answers and all the procedures were on YouTube. You should have looked it up. Don't expect me to put basketball aside for math.
Wow, I'm sorry. I thought you were the teacher.
You know what? YouTube does a fine job of that. I'm also the basketball coach. Excuse me.
Wow, basketball job is such a big job.
I have no idea what you just said, so I'm going to ignore you, which is probably why you made an F.
In that little hole. I'm sorry to hear that. Perhaps I could join you in there and snuggle for warmth. I have a large coat and you'll find me quite warm. Just a fellow traveler passing by on my way home.
Man, even I'm creeped out.
Garen, Adele, what a pleasure to meet you at last. My name is Emma, and I am in Mr. York's employ. I'll be taking you to your father in just a moment. Do you mind going outside and waiting by my car? I need a private word with your host.
Good. Okay. For this next scene, I know that you're big on theater. The theatrical instinct is to be big. I'm actually looking for higher intensity, but not higher voice.
Okay.
So don't make it intense with the lower volume voice, with the terrified.
Okay.
Girls, calm down. I've got a flashlight here. See? Everything's fine.
Oh, man. I wanted to lose.
I've heard some sounds come out of my mouth I didn't know I was capable of and I didn't like. I was like, can I please do that again?
Happened a couple times today, actually.
Yeah, some squeaky and just some stuff that I was like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. That didn't sound good. Let's do that again.
Yeah, stuff that just sounded off.
Typically when you're doing things like stuff that you would just never do unless like you had a reason, like for example, like screaming. We just did this where we're like,
just gonna say
and then we're like, that doesn't sound good. So Thatcher, tell us to do something different. Like that's the kind of stuff that you don't really like.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you get clobbered on the head on a regular basis, you're not screaming a lot, so you don't like, you know what I mean? Think about, well, how does that sound? So when you go through a whole 5 pages of script where everybody's just screaming every 2 seconds, you're not used to that. So
it's weird because I'm trained in like stage combat and different fighting and stuff. So
you gotta teach me some of that.
Yeah, so I'm used to the screaming. I'm used to it. So like when I had you guys and I had Addie in here and you guys were like, well, and Makani, I had 4 actresses a day that I had to have scream. And all of you are like, okay, now how do I do this? And like, it's fine. It's just something that like, to me, I just overlook, you know?
Well, that makes a good director for those situations because we were all like,
oh yeah. So
it's natural, I mean, it's one thing
for you. Exactly.
Like,
I'm like, I was like, you scream.
Yeah. It's one thing when the direction says scream, or in parentheses screams, like it's a direction. It's another thing when the line says and you're like, does he actually want me to say or does he just want me to scream? Because if I scream I'm gonna sound like a cartoon character.
Yeah.
So
then it's like and it's like no, but no,
no,
this
go
is
away.
how you do it.
Yeah, and people don't make that sound.
Honey, I didn't. Shut up! Please just shut up, Olive.
That was good. All right, you want to give us a couple more options with your scream? Like you just stage yourself in the...
Oh, yeah, you got it.
Just a couple options. And you may want to step back if you go loud.
All right.
Ha! And how about the one where it's like you're sucking your breath in instead of out? That was good. Ready? Yep. Go for it.
Hey guys, the facts are these.
No, less douchey. Just, I said announcer voice.
Who are you guys? I'm Mary. I'm Rosalind. Betsy. Bobby. Okay, so you are the 4 children, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so the 4 of them are all like kids. Should we do it by height so that the microphone?
Yeah, sure.
This was the reason I was saying put her separate. Okay.
Yeah.
Dawn?
Oh, yeah.
That's a good question. Let's see.
Are
you playing Dawn?
What about the Ninja Cat?
Are y'all doing power?
That's Jenna.
And then at the bottom of page 3, no, it's a good story. You're not making me feel any better. It got a little stumbled with the pages of turning pages, and I didn't want that to get caught up, so will you do those 2 lines again?
No, it's a good story. You're not making me feel any better.
Okay.
You want that? I want you to I want you to sing a rap version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
I love the spontaneous moments today when we were recording and we were just told to like kind of go with it. So Addie Miller and I are sitting on a mic together and we're sharing this mic and we're playing like these 2 teenage girls that like are just complete idiots and just annoying. And we look at each other and we start, she's like, I was like, you need a dictionary. And she's like, what's a dictionary? And so like we have this, like, we literally went on for like 2 minutes, like, debating like what a dictionary is and how you use Siri and like whether or not we should be allowed to look up this stuff on iPhones and why we should ever have to take a standardized test again because we're just too cute for that. And no one else in the room heard it because they continued with their lines and we're saying this underneath it. And so if you go back and you listen to it,
I got that.
Like 2 minutes of it, we're just talking about that. And it's great. And that made me really happy because we just did it.
Come to one more phone time.
Carl, shut the hell up, man. Now.
My Uncle Dad owns this store.
I don't have a music stand for you girls, so you'll just have to try to hold it up as high as you can because you have to look up and into the mic, okay? Try to avoid looking down, okay?
Claudia.
Please.
I mean, have you ever been around people and still felt alone?
That's not the same thing as lonely.
I don't think you're getting what I mean.
Got the clicks and the glams with the boots and the birds, bums up for the cup, they don't give a fuck. Both riding dirty with their own music playing with the pimped up rims. Everybody staring down the jacked up truck, girls flying out the back, all the tinted windows with the mini 14 crack. Come back from Button, okay, into the club. It don't matter, only guy gets judged. Best things are unexpected. I say they not be regretted. Like, should we give a props to your homies out west? The original flat rim was a cowboy.
Almost just fell down, man.
Ancient dude hassling us as soon as we step on your lawn, and everybody working for you is ugly as fuck, and you're extra racist. And, actually, I don't see that much difference between y'all and Walmart.
Harold, check out this cashmere bath towel. Why is it that every time I see you talking to somebody, they look pissed off?
This fool trying to charge me $5 for Captain Action.
Oh, it's a cute doll.
It's not a dog, it's an action figure.
I mean, we'd be cooked by the superheated gases well before the reflection would fade in the moon.
Greg, honey, sweetheart, is there any chance you were, how should I put this?
Dead fucking wrong?
Yes, thank you, honey, but let's be ladies. Dead freaking wrong about the world ending.
Yeah, it's been like 10 minutes already. What the hell?
Oh, wait! Ah, damn it!
What?
I totally forgot. I'm so sorry, guys.
What?
Well, NASA was going to be testing their space flashlight tonight. I just totally forgot that fucking A. NASA.
He's an action figure.
But the most important thing is that he's $5.
Man, keep this shit.
When I first walked in here, I mean, I'd only really done the stuff for the Littlest Pet Shop. So, and they pretty much, different companies operate different ways, but they operate the same way in the sense that like Littlest Pet Shop does the same thing every single time you record for them. We do the same thing every time we record for Shadow Art Productions. So it's like, when I walked in here, I was very used to being told to read the same line 25 times in the same way. And then, okay, here's a cupcake. Enjoy that. Okay, now we're going to do it this way. And then I came in here and there were all these people here and everybody was talking. And when somebody with Littlest Pet Shop, when somebody messes up a line, you start all the way back from the beginning. It's like the whole take is blown. Whereas here, when somebody flubs a line, they tell you to start back from the beginning of that line. So it's not like the entire take with everybody else is blown. So that was kind of a big relief to get over, because it's like when you're 10 pages into a take and then you flub a line and then everybody else is like, oh my god, I can't believe we have to do this all over again. It's nice that it doesn't affect other people. You just kind of start over and it's easily cut and change. And I think with the situation with Littlest Pet Shop was more that you only had 10 lines total, so you're doing them, and then if you mess it up, they don't want to have to start back and chop stuff individually. So it's if you mess something up, the whole take is blown, and then they just get rid of the take.
It's more mechanical and or not really mechanical, but more doing it, and it's become more fast paced. So it's just it's a weird environment. I love the environment. It's a strange environment that you're only recording your voice and the way that everything's set up and people coming and going. So at first it was a little overwhelming of all the different people and the different scripts and how are we gonna do all of this and the pages and everything. So
I gotta let him fuck.
Well,
You don't gotta let him fuck. Yeah.
My bad. Go do it. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I gotta let him do him. Fuck.
You really have to be able to like flip switches and turn stuff on and off a lot quicker. I think that voiceover in this context would be very difficult for a very method actor because it would be very hard to completely like change your entire being from your core inside out, like at the drop of a hat like that. And sometimes we're doing things where you're one character for a little while and then you leave the room so somebody else could record something, and then because you have to go home, you come back and record a completely different role, and then like come back and then somebody else comes in and then you go back to a different script. So it's like you don't even really record in order one script, and then it's like, okay, I can, you know, shovel that away, that's done, now I'm going to start with a different script. It's like all over the place. It's out of order and it's different scripts at different times. So it, you know, you really have to be able to snap in and out of it very well. And I'm not really a very method actor. For me, I can just like walk in and look down and then the script is there and then I'm just able to just go, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. But I mean, on film, you get to do the same thing all day, so I guess it's easier to stay in character would be the best way to describe it, because you walk on set knowing that you have this personality, you have this core being, this is your motive, this is, you know, how you're going to get your motive, how you're going to get what you're doing from other people, and here are your lines, and here are your 7 pages for the day, and that's it. And guess what? I think we recorded like 150 pages today. I mean, it's like totally different than recording 6 pages of film copy, so.
Yeah. I mean, when you're acting, I'm sorry. I mean, when you're acting, you're physically on set. You can see what you're doing instead of just imagining the scenery and the characters and who you are. So, I mean, it's definitely a lot harder, I think.
Well, you also have, on film, you have so many more tools available to you to express who you are. And when you're in a studio, you have your voice and nothing else. And the other person, from the same perspective, on film, they can engage multiple senses with the experience of the art form. Whereas in voiceover, you know, if you're listening to a podcast, the only sense that this person is engaging in is their hearing. Like, they can't see, they can't, like, visualize the situation. They don't get the same kind of emotion from multiple senses.
The thing for me is, I don't mind it at all that I'm playing multiple characters in one day, because I was trained equally in the Stanislavski and Meisner methods of acting, and I also dance and sing. And so a lot of times for auditions or for class or for whatever, I'll have to know 7 different monologues, one of every different kind of character, one middle-aged woman, and a 7-year-old child who's in the middle of throwing a tantrum. So I'm used to easily transitioning between entirely different beings, because in Meisner and Stanislavski, you have to become those humans fully, just like you do. So I'm used to transitioning between people very quickly. So for me, it wasn't that much of a new experience when I first started doing voiceover. The main thing that it changed for me between doing regular film work was that it was weird, because I could play a character that on stage or on screen I would never have a chance of portraying. I can play a 7-year-old. I can play a guy. I can play a superhero.
That's true.
I can play.
Especially with the age thing. With voiceover, like, I could never walk into an audition for a 10 to 12-year-old and be like, hello, I am here. And they'd look at me like I had 10 heads. I'm 27 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I look young, but not that young. So I could never do that. But in voiceover, I've got, like, little kids tweeting me being like, Littlest Pet Shop, this, that, the other thing. And, like, they don't know the difference. So.
It really opens up your boundaries, voiceover.
I played a boy. It's great.
Yeah, and it's so different, because when are you ever going to get to do that? Unless you are doing a voiceover job. It's so awesome.
One time my manager actually contacted me and asked, because I can do like as young as 3 or 4, like a baby girl. And she contacted me and she was like, do you think you could do a 3-year-old boy for an audition? And I was like, I don't know about that.
Because at that age, they sound pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same.
I don't know.
Yeah, they sound... Because the boy I was playing is like a 12-year-old boy. So at that point, they sound different, but not like a whole lot different. So
yeah. Especially since this involves you.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know.
Well, Jane's the one I've been cheating with.
Me too. I've been cheating with Jane too.
Oh, really? Oh, sweet. I mean, I'm really pissed off. So, ladies, we still got a few minutes for that three-way, over in the van.
Wait, so Jane was sleeping with both members of a married couple?
Hey, well, what can I say? The 90s were boring as hell.
I missed school anyway. You know what? I'm gonna actually do it the way you wrote it.
He's around here somewhere. I think he went to Joseph A. Banks. The line was so long here, so he ran in there really quickly.
Oh, I'll go see if I can find him.
Okay, so now we have Katie, Emma.
Did that give you enough to work with?
Yep, you're good. I think that's actually the end of you.
Probably. I think so. I'm dismissed.
So we've got Emma, Katie, and starting Julie. We're on page 5. Let me just see how far I want to go through this because it's just us until the bottom of page 7. Okay, so we're gonna stop. Your last line is gonna be at the bottom of page 7 where you say "too late" because Kevin has a line there, and I'm gonna stop before Kevin so that Bishop doesn't have to do anything right now. Because we got like 3 pages in here. I enjoyed directing today. Today was my second time directing, but it was my first time directing a lot of people at once. The first time that I directed, I only had 2 people and a much shorter script. So today I directed 3 audio plays that were all things that I wrote. So I was excited to get to do that and get to tell people what to do and tell them what I wanted. It's different, being on the other side.
Yes, I've directed once before, and I was just kind of helping out, like, between whatever was going on, and I did some this and some that, and I've written some, but this is my first time directing a complex script, so...
Yeah, and I mean, you got to direct and solely direct because you weren't acting in that, right?
Correct. However, I am narrating it.
Yeah, so that's like totally... That's a different thing, because when I was directing today, I had to act in it and direct, so it's kind of about like trying to get all of my lines out first and just have everybody else read with me, and then when I feel like I've got my lines out, then I can focus a little bit more on getting exactly what I want out of everybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have to balance it. Everything about it's a balancing act, because you want to let the person know what you think, but you also don't want to like hurt their feelings or like start a conversation so much that you get sidetracked or whatnot. So it's definitely a balance. Everything is a balance.
Yeah. Or start a conversation and then all the other actors chime in and want to have something to say about it, and then
it's just because then you can't pull away without looking like the jerk, and you have to like
be nasty and tell everybody that they need to be quiet.
Exactly. So it's always a balancing of being nice and sociable, but still staying on track and on schedule.
Yeah. Agreed. I've seen when, like, with Thatcher directing, there was a couple times where somebody would be like, oh, well, can I do this? Or, like, just be, like, not as receptive. I didn't really have that with me, but it would, like, it bothers me when an actor doesn't listen to a director regardless of what the actor thinks they should be doing, because at the end of the day, you're, being paid to work for that director, and if it's their script and what they wrote, I mean, you can have, like, input and you could bring something to the table, but if the director wants you to do something different, it doesn't matter, what you want. It's your job to give the director what they want, even if you think it's bizarre and, doesn't fit what you're trying to do.
I get what you mean, but at the same time, I'm one of the people that's all about the collaboration of the project, so I believe a lot in, like, getting everyone's, like, not like, if you're behind schedule, not being, like, going around to every person and be like, oh, what do you think about this? But, like, making sure everyone's on the same page. And, like, if someone has a choice that they avidly feel about, then, hearing it out and trying it, but also trying it my way unless we're behind schedule. Because a choice an actor is 100% about, if you want someone to be evil and they think that they're just faking it and that they're not really being evil, their performance of that will be 1,000 times stronger than a fake performance is something you just tell them if they don't have their heart in it.
That's true. What I'm impressed by with Thatcher is, well, first of all, the age, the age difference between the two of us, just starting to direct at the same time, and then, you being able to do everything that I'm doing and more, in my opinion, because, I sat here today and directed all stuff that I wrote. So I wrote it. I knew what I wrote the characters, how I wanted them to sound.
You also wrote it, so...
Yeah, so I could have a lot of opinions about that. It's way bigger of a talent, especially for a 15-year-old to come in and take something that large that somebody else wrote and then know how you want it to sound as a director when it didn't come from your own brain and your own heart. So that's pretty exceptional, at least in my opinion.
Thank you.
A little more confused and distracted.
Okay. Okay.
Dude, yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I like the second one. Well, no, the other ones were bad. It was just like, they were different, you know. I'm not good with words.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sain Odom.
I'm Danika Adams.
And I guess we're going to talk a little bit about voiceover and acting and why we do what we do and that sort of thing. I think it's obvious why we do what we do. We love it and enjoy it. And we both have done on-screen and just voiceover work. And we're going to talk about some of our favorite roles. You want to start?
Yeah, it's a little different working on screen versus working in voice work, because on screen you definitely have to, all of you has to become that same character, like including the clothes that you wear and the way you do your hair and the way you write even. But with voice work, you do still have to put a good amount of effort and know exactly your character, because otherwise you got to know their background, what they talk like, what they think like, what their activities are, so it comes out in your voice.
That's right. I used to think that voiceover, I could just kind of sit still in the chair and just read and use my voice and that would work. It's all just voice acting, right? But I find that the more animated I get in my chair or standing up using my hands and looking at the people across the room, if I get lucky enough to be in the room with people like Danika, it actually makes my reading way better. So I think that that's really fun and unique about what we get to do. Usually we get to be in the room with at least some of the actors in our scripts, and we're not just doing it all alone in isolation, and I think it makes what we do definitely more fun for us, but hopefully better for our listening audience too.
I loved watching Robin Williams. I saw clips of Robin Williams as he would act, like voice act, and he would be like, yeah.
Right, exactly.
You're so awesome. Like, you make the perfect genie.
Yeah. And no one will ever see it, except we see it now, but we didn't see it on screen. Obviously, it was cartoon, but it came through in his voice, right?
It did. It's powerful.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of role to, like, voice?
Well, I think Dexter knows now that I really like villains. I love being the villain. But the best role he ever wrote for me was a mom who was a villain, because I am a mom, so I completely connected to it, and it was a mom who was enraged by the loss of her family, which I can imagine if that were to happen to me, and so it really spoke to me. So it was a little part of me, and then something very extreme. Hopefully I'm not a villain, an evil person in real life.
You just said I connected to that, you know, as a mom and a villain, and I'm like, okay.
The mom part connected to me, and the villain took me outside of myself, so I get to do a little bit of both, which was perfect for me. So what about you?
I love villain characters.
Yeah.
I do. I love them. But I think for me, it's literally any type of dynamic role. I like characters you can really you can powerfully feel. So whether they're extremely ditzy and airheaded, or very evil and conniving, or they're going to achieve their goals and beat the bad guy, you know, I love these characters because they're just like, I know who I am and I'm gonna do it. I'm like,
they
you
all
go.
have attitude, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, even the ditzy ones, like, I know who I am and what's 2 + 4?
It's very specific.
I gotta stop that. I gotta stop
Yeah.
this. I'm in trouble.
Yeah, but it's specific, and I like that about his characters. And I say this all the time about all of our Shadow Dog production scripts, but the women in these roles are never boring, and I'm so thankful for that. There are no boring ingenues, the girl who loves the boy, the end. It's always so much more than that. There are smart females, there are powerful ones, there are ditzy, dumb ones, but they are caricatures. They are just not some generic version of what some guy thinks we should be, and I really appreciate that, since all these scripts are written by a man. It's a very smart man, so I really love that about the scripts we get to work with.
I love Shadow Dog scripts. All of their scripts. They are so unique, like, just off the wall, just different stories that you don't imagine. None of them are generic.
Yeah.
There's not a single generic story I think I have ever done for Shadow Dog Productions at all.
Yeah.
And on top of that, every character is connectable. They're not, even though I said I like dynamic characters, they're not just one type. It's like, we're always going to be the bad guy. Like, they have emotions and they do different things. So I love that. I respect it so much. I love his writing.
I'm terrible about that because
one thing about voiceover is that you can do 10 roles in a day.
Exactly.
And so then it's, like for me, like as an actress, when I look at a script, the character's name isn't what matters. Of course, it affects them, but like the name of the script, like when the character's living their life, the name of the script doesn't matter. Like, so downtime doesn't matter to Olivia because that name means nothing to her. So I don't always remember the name of scripts or my character name because they're not part of the character development to me.
Exactly.
And so I fully understand where you're coming from. I've walked out of the booth before and him be like, all right, so did you do blah, blah, blah? And I've been like, what's that? He's like, you just spent 3 hours working on it. And I was like, didn't know that's what it was called. Like, couldn't have told you.
Hey, it's Rod from the Blackout Tips.
And it's Kriss from MTR Network.
And we just got done doing voiceover work with Dexter of Shadow Dog Productions. This is Chris's first time. What'd you think about it, man?
So it's actually been pretty good. It's been pretty fun, you know. I remember when Dexter first came to me about doing voiceover work, and he kept saying, "Oh man, you know, your voice would be really good. You do the podcast." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's the same thing." You know, like,
right.
You guys, do you listen to podcasts? Like, I stumble over my words all the time. Like, I'd be saying the wrong thing. I can't say names. Like, I'm like, you think I haven't? Like, it's bad. Okay,
Right,
so.
right.
But no, it's been really fun. I haven't messed up that much. So
Yeah, you were good in there, man. Especially for a first time, man. What was your favorite thing about it so far?
You know, my favorite thing so far has been that I think the characters I actually can relate to, which in some of the cases kind of scary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like
it's fun.
you can kind of relate to a hitman serial killer a little bit.
Yeah, you know, I might have a little bit of a problem there. So, you know.
And that is your character?
Yeah, one of my characters.
Tell us about the character a little bit.
Yeah, so I have several things we're doing. That's the other thing, too. So when he first asked me to do this, it was like, oh, come down and do a little voiceover work in the background, something like that. No, I got one of the characters, literally a hitman serial killer, secret agent kind of guy whose brothers died, and he's there trying to, you know, find out who killed his brother. Then I have the neighbor. That's one role. Then another role is a neighbor who's a nerd guy, and we have a woman who is not a nerd, and she wants our advice on her nerd date, and how to go on her first nerd date.
You get drunk at a funeral.
I get drunk at a funeral, and I'm a complete idiot because I'm a professional mourner who's his first day on the job, and I completely mess this up, fall into the grave. I vomit into the grave. It's really, really bad. And then I'm a dad. I'm a dad telling a story to his little girl about a story about divorce and infidelity. Like, it's a lot of range of different things going on here, and it's a lot. But so far, I haven't cracked. I think after it's done, then I'll be like, I can't believe I did all that. So.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about it too. Is you can be so many different characters and stuff, and it's not like physical acting where it's like if I want to go be this other character, I got costume, makeup, clothes, all this stuff. With this, it's just like, all right, different voice or different script or whatever. Now, were you nervous at all?
I think I should be, but I'm not, and that's what scares me. Because there's actually people here that they do this. They've worked before. Even you and Karen, you guys have done this before. I'm the rookie, and I'm reading some of these lines going, wait, I'm speaking this many times?
Yeah, when we walked in, we were rookies. It's so weird watching it now. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, well, this is Kriss' first time. He's good. But I remember when we were doing it, they were like, you guys are actually really good. And we're like, I don't think, like, inside I'm like, hey, that's impossible.
Right. That's very sweet of you to say. Making me feel better about this. He sent me the first script, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like 37 pages. I was like, whoa, okay, wait. So I'm like, narrator, right? He's like, oh no, you're Carter.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, are you sure? Because he's got a lot of lines here, man.
Like, do I need to memorize these? Do I need to be in character when I show up?
You got a lot of confidence in me right here, and I don't know if that's really well placed.
Right.
But I won't let you down.
That's kind of cool. And then, like, Dexter is so easy to work with.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, like, that's one of the things I like about Dexter is, like, there's not a lot of pressure to be perfect.
Right.
So it kind of allows you to kind of play with the lines, say things. Like, you mess up, you just say it again. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of times, I think the stereotype is there's just, like, a director hanging over you every word being like, God damn it, you're messing up my set. You know, like everyone's Christian Bale or Terminator.
You're in my light. You know.
No, I'm not gonna lie. It's either the Christian Bale one or I had the thought of Bill O'Reilly. Fucking we'll do it live. We'll do it live. I'm just like, oh man, this is gonna.
Yeah.
Man, the first time I'm not gonna lie. The first time somebody messed up and it wasn't me, I was like, oh, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh god, man. So like you messed up with it was like Descendant, and
Yeah.
you said it's supposed to be
Decedent
Decedent
or something?
And I was like, thank God, because I was gonna mess up on that word.
Yeah.
I thought it was just gonna be me.
It takes all the pressure off.
Oh, yeah,
man.
it definitely does.
It takes all the pressure off.
I love stories. I write stories, read them. I love kids, especially kids' stories. But I think stories are what bring life to life, almost. Because a lot of times we go through a mundane cycle, and hearing other people's stories is fantastic to me. But acting is being able to experience those stories, being in their shoes. So, I mean, I love film acting because I can actually be them and be there, and I see the set around me. But I love voice acting because I imagine the set, and I imagine where I am, and I get to be somebody who is completely not typecast according to my skin or my face or even my gender. I could play a guy or a girl depending on your talent as a voice actor, and to me that is something special because I can really be anybody.